Okay, welcome to our Introduction to Grammar course at Southern Utah University. This video is going to focus on compound and complex sentences and on coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. So we'll look at some compound sentences, we'll look at some complex sentences, and we'll even look at compound complex sentences. So far in the course, we've just dealt with simple sentences. So sentences that have a subject and a predicate. Just one subject, just one predicate. But let's talk now about compound sentences. Compound sentences have two independent clauses. So each has a subject and a predicate, and then they're joined by a coordinating conjunction. We talked about coordinating conjunctions before. You can think of that acronym, the fanboys, right? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Most common ones are really just so, and but. The cat napped and Tom watched TV. So these could be two independent sentences. The cat napped, Tom watched TV, but we can connect them with that coordinating conjunction. Let's take a look at how they'd be diagrammed. So we have these two relatively simple sentences. The cat napped and Tom cleaned the room. Okay. The first one is an intransitive verb. The second one is a transitive verb that takes the object, the room. The question now is, how do we connect these sentences? And the simplest way is just to put a dotted line, and dotted lines often work in diagrams to help show where we're joining clauses. And so we put the and on the line there. Some diagrammers will put the and between the two verbs. In this case, they put it between napped and cleaned, but putting it over here in the sentence works just fine as well. Let's take a look at this other sentence here. I am studying, but my roommate is playing basketball. Okay, we've got a different coordinating conjunction, but it's the same structure of two independent sentences being joined together. They're both of equal status. Both of these sentences are both independent sentences. That's why we can use a coordinating conjunction. So I am studying. Okay. Just again, another intransitive sentence. It's in the present progressive form. And then my roommate is playing basketball. This is another sentence with a transitive verb that takes the object of basketball. My roommate is playing basketball. So we could join them with our coordinating conjunction there. Coordinating conjunctions can combine other things that are of equal status. So two subjects of equal status, Gemma and Paul, sing elegantly. Now the sing elegantly is a sentence we had from before, but we only had one subject. Let's take a look at how it looks when we use the coordinating conjunction to combine two subjects. Okay, we get the sing elegantly part, that's our predicate. And so the way we would show that there's two subjects here, we kind of put these branching lines, okay? And then we can combine them again with the and. Let's take a look at a sentence that has a coordinating conjunction combining two predicates. So hamsters eat and hamsters sleep. Hamsters eat and sleep. So we've got our hamsters, we've got our line there, okay, getting ready for the predicate. And we'll just do the same thing. We'll just branch our predicate line into our two verbs, and we can put in the coordinating conjunction. You could also use this for compound adjectives. So red and white stripes covered the sweater. So we've got our basic sentence, stripes covered the sweater. And that's a transitive verb there because it's taking the object, the sweater. But then when our adjectives are coming off of the noun phrase in the subject, we could just connect those two with a dotted line. We generally don't see them with the branching form that we see sometimes when we are showing combined subjects or combined main verbs. But this works just as well. You could do the same thing on the predicate side with adverbs. Right? If there are two adverbs that are connected with an or a but or something, you could do a similar kind of structure to show. All right, so some things to keep in mind when we're using coordinating conjunctions. First, identify the words or phrases of equal status. Okay? Whether it's two independent sentences that are of equal status and are being combined, or whether it's two noun phrases for the subject, or even two noun phrases for the object, whether it's the main verb, or maybe it's the whole verb phrase, or even just they've got the same auxiliary, but they've got different main verbs. Whatever it is, you just want to link them with a dashed line and with the coordinating conjunction on it, and it shows that those two things are of equal status. When we write coordinating conjunctions in a sentence, especially when we're combining two independent clauses, we can combine them then, but we put a comma between the end of the first independent sentence and the coordinating conjunction. So I did this, comma, and I did that. All right. Now let's look at complex sentences. So complex sentences could be defined as having an independent clause and a dependent clause. And we're going to look at dependent clauses here that use a subordinating conjunction adverbially. There's other ways to get dependent clauses. We're going to look at those later in the semester. Right now, we just want to focus on ones that are coming off of a verb, so adverbial descriptions or modifiers. So let's take a look at a couple sentences. While we shopped, our cousin waited in the car, and the vase broke because the picture frame fell. So if we look at this first sentence, let's try to identify the two parts. So while we shopped is one of them. This is our dependent clause. It's got that subordinating conjunction at the beginning. So that can't function as its own sentence. Within it, there's a small sentence, right? We shopped. And then another sentence here that is could function independently. Our cousin waited in the car. In our second one, the vase broke could be an independent sentence. Okay. The picture frame fell could be one, but it's connected to, again, the subordinating clause because, and that makes it a dependent clause. So we're going to look at ways to diagram these to better understand how the components are working. Okay, so just there we can see underlined are our subordinating conjunctions. The blue part is the dependent clause. The red part is the independent clause. So this one, if we go with the dependent clause, let's diagram that first. Our cousin waited in the car. And then our other sentence is quite simple before we add that subordinating conjunction, just we shopped. So the question is, how do we connect these? And because this while we shopped is functioning adverbially, it's answering the question of when. Okay, when did our cousin wait in the car? Our cousin waited in the car while we were shopping. Okay, so that it's functioning adverbially, describing the waiting. Okay, when the waiting was happening, and it was happening while we shopped. So we can connect those two verb phrases with that subordinating conjunction on a dotted line. And really, what that while is functioning is it's helping to let the listener or the reader know, here is a dependent clause. Okay, you need to understand this portion of the sentence, and then you can understand the other portion of the sentence. And we're diagramming it in this way to help see those two parts and then how they're connected. Let's take a look at this one. So again, we've got our two parts. Okay, the vase broke and the picture frame fell. How are they being connected? In other words, what is this subordinating conjunction doing? And if we think about it, it answers the question of why. Okay, why did the vase break? Okay, and so again, it's helping us understand the why of the breaking. So again, we'll use a subordinating conjunction to connect our verb phrases. Okay, on a dotted line. So the vase broke because the picture frame fell. All right, so when we work with coordinating conjunctions, we want to identify each clause. We want to find out which is the dependent, which is the independent. We want to answer the question, where, when, or why, what's happening? What is this dependent clause doing to the independent clause? Is it telling us about where it happened, when it happened, how it happened, why it happened? Okay, and then we're going to connect that dependent clause to the main clause adverbially, as if it's coming off of the main verb phrase. Okay, now again, as I mentioned, there's other kinds of dependent clauses. We'll take a look at them later in the course, but for now we're going to function with independent clauses that are functioning adverbially. When we're writing, okay, the clauses can be connected directly if the independent clause comes after the, if the dependent clause comes after the independent clause. So like our second sentence there, in the examples we looked at, the vase broke because the picture frame fell. This serves a function for the listener or the reader as a signal. That word because tells them, okay, now you're going to get a dependent clause. Okay? And that's enough of a signal to the reader that they don't need something else. They don't need punctuation to help them. But if we're going to put the dependent clause first, as in while we shopped, our cousin waited in the car, we use a comma after the dependent clause to help signal to the reader, this is the end of the dependent clause. Now I'm going to tell you the dependent clause. And it's just there to help readers process sentences more easily. We can't hear intonation in reading, and so that comma kind of functions that purpose to help signal the end of one clause and start the next one. So let's now look at compound and complex sentences, compound, complex. What's happening here is we've got to have at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause to be considered a compound, complex sentence. We've got these independent parts that are being joined, but then we've also got a dependent part that's being connected. So here's one example. When the game started, I was on my phone and Will was buying hot dogs. If we got rid of the when the game started part, we just have a compound sentence. I was on my phone and Will was buying hot dogs. If you get rid of the Will hot dogs part, we just get when the game started, I was on my phone. That's just a complex sentence, but to put it together, we get compound, complex. The next sentence we're going to take a look at here, it's a little bit different. The roof leaks, but the door still works after the storm. So we have the roof leaks and we have but the door still works. Then we have this phrase after the storm. It kind of looks similar, right, to when the game started, but it's not. Let's think about why it's not the same. Okay, so again, we've got our dependent and then two independents. But here, if we look at that green part before the storm, this is really just a prepositional phrase. Okay, it's got the storm, which is a noun, which could function as a subject, but there's no predicate to that part, that clause. So it's really just a prepositional phrase. It's not a dependent clause that has a subject and a predicate. So it's actually a simpler sentence than the one before it. So we'll take a look at both of these and how they're diagrammed. Let's give ourselves lots of space here. I was on my phone. Okay, so this is a functions as a linking verb, right? A linking verb of place. I was where? I was on my phone. Okay. It's not really so much a where, it's more of this concept, but it's diagrammed this way. Okay, and then we have our second sentence. Will was buying hot dogs. So I was on my phone and Will was buying hot dogs. Then we've now got to add our dependent clause when the game started. Okay, when the game started answers the question of when. When were you on the phone, right? I was on my phone when the game started. So we can put that dependent clause coming off of the verb. We could do it either verb. We could do it the verb of Will was buying hot dogs, or we could do it on the was on my phone. Either is fine. And we just show it there that it's got its subject, the game, and its predicate started, but it's linked with that subordinating conjunction. Now let's look at this one. It's not really a complex sentence, but it is a compound sentence. And what we've got here is a compound sentence where one of the independent clauses has a longer adverbial phrase coming off of it. So we have the roof leaked, okay, fairly simple sentence, intransitive verb. The door still worked, okay, and we can see that still is functioning as an adverb, okay, and before the storm also functions adverbially. It's just a prepositional phrase. And we can just add it on there. But it's different from a complex sentence because what that adverbial modifier coming off the bottom there doesn't have a subject and a predicate. Couldn't function as its own sentence. Instead, before in this sense isn't functioning as a subordinating conjunction. It's just functioning as a preposition. Okay? That's telling us that something happened before the storm, but there's no verb associated with storm. So it's a slightly simpler sentence. It's really just a compound sentence. Right? So when you're working with compound complex sentences, you want to identify what are the independent clauses, what are the dependent clauses, okay? And you look at that dependent clause. Is it really a dependent clause with a subject and a predicate? Maybe it's just a prepositional phrase, in which case you're just dealing maybe with a compound sentence and not a complex one. So we've looked at compound sentences, complex sentences, and we've even looked how they could be combined into a compound complex sentence.